Awesome. All right, thanks for your patience. I know we're getting started a little bit late. And I first want to just slow down and thank you for being here tonight, being here in the office, being here with us on Zoom. There's a lot of things you could do on a Tuesday night. I know I say this a lot. There's many things you could do. There's a lot of pulls in many directions in terms of engaging in your time and energy. And you showing up tonight to learn about a topic that could potentially be life-changing if you choose to implement it or better understand how it relates to your health in just 30 minutes is really honorable. And so thank you for being here. My hope is you take, if anything, you take one thing away that you can start implementing every day that will help support you in the spectrum of health and disease that will help move you towards health, right? That's what we want over time. Here, Dr. Kristen and I talk about the long game a lot. You know, it's easy to think about what's going on in our health right now or in the next couple of weeks, but what trajectory are you on that impacts your health, you know, for decades down the road, right? And I find this conversation around heart coherence and heart rate variability one where people think, I don't even know what this is about. And that's the beauty of this, is that I think you'll learn some things. I think a lot of people haven't heard of heart coherence. And so let's just dive in. So with heart coherence, so let's just talk about energy fields. Okay, have you guys ever walked into a room where you're like, man, something's going on here, it just doesn't feel right? Whether parents were fighting or, you know, something just didn't feel right. Would you agree that there's components of energy that are maybe higher vibration and lower vibration? Higher examples would be peace and love and joy. Lower would be anger, frustration, right? So if you enter into a space that is holding one of those emotions, there's typically an energy attached to it. And the beauty of, and how can we feel that, is our heart coherence. And so our brain actually has a level of coherence or an ability to perceive its surroundings, and it's about an inch outside of our skull. Our heart, on the other hand, its ability to experience its environment it's right here. It's 100 times greater than the brain's field, and its impact is like feet. And this says several feet. I think I've read up to 6 feet. Okay, so let me take a step back, because I think a lot of times we talk a lot about the brain and we don't necessarily talk about the heart. When we were conceived, okay, the first organ to form in utero was the brain. To follow that close behind was the heart. Okay, you got to get blood flow to all the areas where organs are being formed and developed and growing. And your heart, the brain cells, so your neurons were actually in the heart and they migrate up to the brain. So your heart and brain have this intricate connection where if your heart experiences something, it boom, impacts your neurology and how your brain perceives things. Just like if your brain perceives things, it impacts your heart. It just so happens that your heart's coherence and its field is bigger. It reaches more space. It's 100 times stronger. And so I want you to understand that your heart is sending signals to your brain all the time, and your brain is sending signals to your heart. It is a constant communication. And the heart's field is 60 times greater in amplitude. You know, amplitude is time and, or not time, it's space. So amplitude then compared to the brain. And it's also 100 times greater. And so that's where we talk about heart coherence, and we loop in the conversation around heart rate variability, because we actually look at how the heart and your brain are communicating and how it's impacted. So your heart influences emotional processing, as well as cognitive function that includes attention, perception, memory, and problem solving. So really understanding how you can support a healthy heart coherence can be valuable in supporting an overall brain body health experience, if that makes sense. So let's talk about that. A healthy heart rhythm. We used to think that a healthy heart rhythm should be very methodical, very like specific rate, steady, never changes. But what we're actually finding is that a healthy heart rate is very irregular. There should be different time intervals between heartbeats. Okay, it's constantly changing. So let's just put a pause here very quickly. Would you agree that if you are going to run in the Olympics, okay, and you're sitting there at the blocks, and you're hearing that gun going to be raised for you to go, would you agree that your heart rate and the requirements of performance are different in terms of heart rate, breathing, blood flow to musculature, I mean, you can go all the way down to enzymes, hormones, all of those things. Would you agree that those are different in that moment compared to when you are in your prime, in your flow, running that 100-meter dash, reaching your top, speed? Would you agree that the neurology and the functions going on in your body, physiology, are different? Yes. Would you agree that sleeping in the middle of the night is different than, if you are concerned about your physical well-being in the middle of a night with, I don't know, maybe at a club and you hear gunshots, whatever? Would you agree there is very different physiological states that are happening? Yes. Okay. So if we go back to this heart rhythm, follow me here. If we go back to this heart rhythm, if your heart always beat at a steady rate, my question for you is, it makes sense in some scenarios, like sleeping at night, right? Very relaxed state. Maybe even see it go slower if we're meditating, we're focused on our breathing, right? Versus, boom, something happens, we got to be up here, right? So every moment of every day, our brain is perceiving the surrounding and going up here and dropping down here. And it can happen instantaneously. And the more adaptability, that coherence of the brain to perceive your surroundings, the more adaptable that is to your world, the healthier you are. Versus, I found with the first pacemakers, they killed people because they set that heart rate so regular. These guys couldn't respond to their surroundings in an appropriate way, especially from going from laying down to sitting up, right? If they need to be responsive, there's no time for rest and recovery, right? So a healthy heart rhythm is very irregular, and you should have these teeny tiny gaps of time between heartbeats. I mean, it's tiny, right? 0.859 seconds, 0.793, 0.726. Very, minute differences, but it's irregular. So we measure that heart rate variability in our office using our subluxation station. And we'll get to that in a second, but let me rewind here because we're talking heart coherence, right? So I talked about the brain perceiving your surroundings and shifting into a variability in terms of what the environment demands of you, and your heart coherence, because it is 100 times greater than the brain, 60 times more powerful. What your heart perceives can be highly impactful to how your brain is experiencing the world. Okay. So we hear a lot about trauma. It's kind of a trendy word. It's trendier in terms of care and healthcare. Is we all have trauma and past trauma. And a lot of times when we've experienced trauma in our life, It's really going back to, did we experience a safe environment to grow, experience the world? Did we have a healthy, co-regulated relationship? Typically that was our mother. And when we talk about safety, it's all about our hearts. Okay. So let me just go here for a second. Actually, let's go back. We'll get there. So I want you to understand, there's your autonomic nervous system, which is the nervous system that is responding to stress in your environment. And your nervous system is made up of your sympathetic state and your parasympathetic state, okay? Both are important, no question. One is not good, one is not bad, okay? It's just if we are entering into those states in a very unhealthy way, or if we get stuck in those states. But when we're thinking about our heart rhythm and what impacts it, it's how we move into those states based on our environment. And emotions, whether we experience positive, loving, joyful, connected states, can change that rhythm and experience, just like if we experience negative emotions like anger, frustration, vindication, rejection, right? Anxiety, right? That can shift us into a neurological state that impacts how we experience the world. Now I want to go here first. So if you've listened to my polyvagal social theory workshop, you've seen this slide before, but I want you to look at, you guys can't see my pointer, so I'll use my pointer here in a second. But if you look at your left, or it is your right side. Okay, so if you look at the right side diagram, you see that social engagement system, okay? I want you to think about social engagement system as your highest executive state, both in brain coherence and heart coherence, okay? If everything is firing, you are feeling very safe, you're very healthy, expressing a high level of health. Think about this social engagement as executive function. Now, I talked about in order for us to move into the parasympathetic or sympathetic states, a healthy way to move into that is when we feel safe, okay? So if you think about a sympathetic state, that's that middle column there. Sympathetic nervous system is mobilization. It's stress response, right? It's protection. I'm going to move and act and move my limbs and torso. I am in fight or flight to respond to a stress. There's a physical demand in my body. Adrenaline is rushing, right? That's just a neurological state, not good or bad. But where it becomes a challenge is if we move into this state in a very unsafe way. Okay, so I want you to think about a healthy, safe way. If you're in your sympathetic nervous system, this is playfulness, right? You're having fun, playing. This could be work. This could be sports. This could be dance. Could be sex. Could be art, right? Whatever puts us into that zone, that flow, that gives us an adrenaline rush, right? Where we are mobilized, but we're mobilized in a safe way. Okay, a good state to be in, right? Now, that parasympathetic state is that rest and digest, that's immobilized. It's, I'm going to say shutting down, but I don't think that's an appropriate term, because I want you to think about sleep as kind of shutting down the processes of wake time to help restore. Okay, so moving into, the parasympathetic state in a very safe way is sleep, relaxation, meditation, a state of bliss. Okay. Now, if we move into these neurological states in a very unsafe way, it creates a similar neurological response, and yet it can create trauma in how our heart perceives things, and can create a pattern if it's there long enough, it can create a pattern in how we respond to our world. Okay. Before I go here, look at me. Don't look at the slide. I want you to get this. There's something called neuroception. Okay. And neuroception is how your brain fills in the gaps based on experience. This is something that happens when we are, very young and moving through development. Okay. So if your brain and your heart perceives environments that are dangerous, it's going to start creating and filling in the gaps for danger, danger, danger. We need to protect ourselves. We need to be ready to mobilize ourselves to prepare for what's to come based on past experience. Okay. If we grow up and we have an experience, a safe, co-regulated relationship, typically the mom, where we have experiences that are safe, our brain will fill in the gaps for safety. So what that means is, as an adult, if we walk into an environment that is potentially unsafe, but this neuroception, our wiring and our growing up has been very safe, our brain will fill in the gaps for safety. So we'll experience a very different world versus somebody who has grown up in a world very unsafe, brain fills in the gaps for danger. They're out in the middle of, activity, zoo, mall, around a lot of people, their brain will fill in the gaps for danger. It's a very different experience. Does that make sense? Okay. So I want you to think about, this left column, not safe, right? If you move into these states in an unsafe way, and you've had an experience or growing up in a way where neuroception wise, your brain's already filling the gaps of feeling unsafe, then when you move into that sympathetic state and you're mobilized and protecting yourself, you are perceiving your world as dangerous and you are in fight or flight. And that is your programming that you shift to. And not only neurology, it's your heart coherence too. If your heart's perceiving things as unsafe, guess where your heart shifts to? Negative emotions, negative experiences. Guess where that vibrational experience is? It's very low, right? And so when you have a lot of people who, especially going through these last couple of years of being isolated and disconnected, even if we grew up in a safe way, if we have been surrounded in every way, sensories, and what we hear and what we feel and who we're connected with is so overloaded with a messaging of it's unsafe to be around anybody. We're not safe in our environment. We don't know what's going on. We don't know what we're breathing in. I'm just painting a picture here that it doesn't just have to be growing up. It has happened in the last 2 to 3 years of feeling very unsafe around other people, very unsafe around, just in our environment. And a lot of us have been in fight or flight. So when we look at people who are experiencing high levels of anxiety, depression, suicide, these folks have moved into a state that's been very unsafe, totally mobilized to protect, and you drop down into an unsafe parasympathetic state. That's life-threatening. That's total shutdown. That's dissociation. That's shock. Okay, that is a total disconnect. And so it starts to give you a lens of why our mental health has really taken a big hit, because what we need first and foremost in every way is human connection. That's the biggest thing. And that has been removed from us. And for a lot of people. I don't know where I'm going with that. Heart coherence. Let's go back to heart coherence. So again, I guess if we understand that what we're experiencing in the world and what we experience in our heart has a direct impact to how our brain perceives things and how our brain's filling in the gaps, then that's going to have a direct experience with, or a direct impact with our experience in the world. okay? And the trajectory we're on in terms of health. So how do we, did I lose anybody? Okay. So we actually do measure heart rate variability in the office. And for any of you guys who have had a core score done, this looks very familiar to do. I didn't number the quadrants, but this upper left-hand quadrant that I've named uptight, this is 1, overwhelm is 2, distress is 3, exhausted is 4, okay? And so ideally you want to be in quadrant number 5, which is that big green box. But when you're looking at this heart rate variability, understand that this is measuring, it's kind of like an EKG, it's measuring how adaptive and responsive you are to your world and what's your reserve. And it also, to a degree, helps you check in with, well, where's my heart coherence? What have I been connected to? What have I been experiencing and feeling in the world, right? Focus drives feeling, kind of like what we went over last week. So this upper quadrant here, uptight, anything on the left side is your sympathetic, that sympathetic state. Right side is parasympathetic function. Okay, so if you are up in that upper left quadrant, uptight, that means you have high sympathetic tone, but you're higher up in function. So we're seeing high adaptability. So we consider this a nervous system that is uptight. You're living on, you're able to adapt and recover, but there is a level of rigidity and tone and just uptight to the system. Okay. If you're hanging out here for long enough, then we oftentimes see people drop into that distress state where they're high sympathetic tone, and then we see poor adaptability. These guys are living on adrenaline. They are just barely making it work. Okay. Versus the right side, that's parasympathetic. If we see somebody charting over there in that upper right overwhelm, that's high adaptability, but also high parasympathetic. And this is a system that is insufficient in their ability to respond to stress. So they're just overwhelmed. They're not able to respond to the demands of their world. Okay. Versus somebody who's in this exhausted state, this is a high parasympathetic, low adaptability, which means, I mean, literally, this is a precursor to a medical event because their system is not responding. So we see somebody charting over here, it's, okay, things have got to change. If this continues, there's likely going to be a diagnosis or an event that's going to really have an impact on your health. So we can start to, just based on how we're gathering information here, we can start to chart, okay, what's going on in this person's world? How is their brain responding and adapting? And we always like to, I always look at, okay, but how is that telling us about our coherence and our perception of our world? Make sense? Which is kind of cool. So I feel like I've been jumping around a lot. I'm not tending to, in terms of understanding heart rate variability, but also going back to the heart coherence piece. When you improve heart coherence, you're going to improve your heart rate variability, period. Okay. So it's looking at how can you improve your coherence. I have got, I'm going to queue up something very specific. It's called heart coherence meditation. It's 3 minutes long, and I know I'm running over. So if you guys want to stay on and do that with me, it's a very specific meditation to bring in the heart and just flood yourself with a very different experience to just disconnect you from, you know, your world. But understand these are kind of a list of things that I made to improve heart rate variability and coherence. You know, meditation, mindfulness, journaling, work-life balance, breath work, finding your joy and laughter, getting out into nature, reconnecting with, you know, life. Because sometimes when we're in this concrete jungle, we get disconnected. Community, connection, friendships, sleeps, hobbies, and vagal exercises, which we can get into in that polyvagal workshop. Okay. So we are going to do this quick coherence technique. Let's see. And I'm going to make sure you guys can hear. See if it'll take me to there. Oh, it's going to take me there. Oops. Sorry, guys. Let's see. I've got internet here. Or I'll take you through it myself. How's that sound? Let's do that. Okay. And then I can send you this link if you want it. So there's 3 components. I'm going to have you actually just, if you have stuff that you're writing on, just set it down. What I want you to do is I want your feet to be sitting flat on the floor. You guys at home, go ahead and join me for this. Go ahead and close your eyes. And I don't need you to do any specific breathing. I just want you to kind of just gauge where your breath is. Okay. And the first step is what we call heart focus. And that's where I want you to shift your attention from the area of your head. I want you to move that attention to your heart. It could almost be like taking an elevator down from your head right to your heart. Okay. Once you get to that heart space, I want you to do what's called heart focus breathing. I want you to breathe naturally and normally. Maybe it's slightly deeper, but I want you to picture your breath flowing in and out of your heart. So you're breathing in from your heart, you're breathing out through your heart. And just feel that flow of breath moving in and out from your heart. That heartbeat is just kind of embracing that breath as it flows in and out. Now, the third step is heart feeling. So while you're maintaining that heart focus and that heart focus breathing, I want you to think about an experience or a feeling that brought you a positive emotional state. Maybe it's somebody you love. Maybe it's an experience that brought you joy. Maybe it's something that you really appreciate and feel grateful for. Maybe it's compassion for others or helping others. I want you to focus on that feeling, that experience, that memory, and sit with that. Breathe in and out of your heart, basking in that moment, that feeling of positivity, whatever that is for you. We're going to do that for 20 seconds. Again, breathing in, out, feeling that heartbeat. And feeling that emotional state of love, of connection, of joy, of appreciation, of gratitude, compassion, whatever that feeling or experience is for you. Okay, I'm going to stop you there. That was actually 30 seconds of breathing in that emotional, loving state, which is great. So this quick coherence technique can literally take 2 to 3 minutes, and it really can change and anchor you into a different state of being, which leaves you open to experiencing a world very differently, which can help. Again, trauma work takes effort, kind of like your chiropractic care, right? Nothing happens overnight. It took you years and decades to get to the state you're in, and it takes years of work to help support a system that can better integrate past traumas and stress with life still happening, right? And having the tools to better engage in a higher expression of life and health, right? Which is the beauty of adjustments. Find that human touch is so powerful. So you're not only getting adjusted to support a brain-body connection, but we find that, human touch is like a double whammy of just supporting better emotional state too, right? And so just to double up on our workshop last week, I guess my challenge to you is, how can you find some moments during your day to either do this quick coherence technique or find your breath and really find what is driving you in terms of the feeling you're experiencing. What is your focus? This is all this is focus determines feeling, right? You focus on the heart and the experiences that you've had to create your reality. So So thank you for being with us tonight. I appreciate you for showing up. I hope that it was something that you learned, as this new topic is new to a lot of people. And my hope is that you share this with somebody, or you share what you've experienced, or you share what you know through chiropractic care. A lot of people don't know what you know, and that's how a lot of people find us, is that you share. We want a healthier community, period. And it starts with each of us and our families and our friends. And when we're all doing better, man, that can change a community and a city. So love and appreciate you. Thanks for being here with us tonight. And I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording.